Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Wednesdays wherever you may be across this great nation, across this great world. College football playoff rankings came out yesterday, and they went almost exactly as I anticipated and told you they would. Let me break down, as we sit now, the 6 teams still alive for the college football playoff and how that can all shake out, right? Now that we've officially seen all of these numbers that came out last night for the College Football Playoff Committee. Number 1, Alabama's in. Initially, when I started saying this and writing it, people were fighting me on this. They were angry on social media. I don't even see anybody arguing it anymore. But here's a stat for you that basically puts to bed the Alabama ain't played anybody argument. Alabama has beaten 4 top 25 teams now. That's more top 25 teams than any other team right now that is contending to make the playoff. Alabama beat LSU, they beat Mississippi State, they beat Missouri, and they have now gone out and they have also beaten Texas A&M, who is in the top 25. So if you want to argue that Alabama hasn't played anybody, you're welcome to do so. But even if Alabama lost to Georgia, they would have the best record against top 25 competition of anybody in college football, but for Georgia, and we'll get to them in a minute. But this is a great stat for you. Georgia, in the 4 spot right now. Georgia has played more FBS teams with winning records than Oklahoma and Ohio State have combined so far. Let me repeat that. Georgia has played 7 teams with winning records so far on the season. Oklahoma's played 3, and Oklahoma's played 3, and Ohio State has played 3 as well. That is, I got to tell you, a stat that's not getting anywhere near enough attention. Everybody wanted to pile on Alabama and say, oh, Alabama hasn't played anybody. Think about that for a minute. Georgia, first of all, Alabama has played more top 25 opponents than anybody else. Georgia has played more teams with winning records, 7, than Oklahoma and Ohio State have combined. If you want a conspiracy theory out there, I actually think 11-2 Georgia might still have a better resume than 12-1 Oklahoma or 12-1 Ohio State. If Georgia lost a close game to Alabama, I think they would have a better resume. But Bama is in, Notre Dame is in. 2 of the 4 spots are taken already. Who is left? Bama, Notre Dame. What else is going to happen? If Georgia beats Alabama, they're in. And if Clemson beats Pittsburgh and they're a 26-point favorite, then Clemson is in. Okay? Those are, I think, the easy calls. Bama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Georgia. If Georgia were to win, we're done. It doesn't even matter what happens in the Big 12 or the Big 10. If Georgia loses, I think the committee will take the next team up, which will be Oklahoma. The only significant real detail from the college football playoff was that Oklahoma is above Ohio State. I don't see any way imaginable, short of Kyler Murray getting injured and Oklahoma still winning, how Ohio State could jump Oklahoma while playing an inferior opponent that they are favored by more points over in the Big Ten title game. If Oklahoma beats Texas and Georgia loses to Alabama, Oklahoma is in. If Ohio State beats Northwestern and Oklahoma loses, I think the committee would probably take Ohio State, although I would argue even 11-2 Georgia would be more valid at that point in time. So we are set. There are 6 teams alive. That is the scenario that is out there for all 6 teams to get into the college football playoff. Let me take the next step here. I was watching the 74-72 LSU Texas A&M game on Saturday night with my 10-year-old. My 10-year-old is sitting beside me. I let him stay up late. Doesn't end until after 11 o'clock our time. He's like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. Said, this is the best thing I've ever seen, Dad. This is the best college football game ever. And while we're sitting there, he said, Dad, is this the best college football overtime you've ever seen? And I said, well, I've seen a lot of good college football games in my day, but did you know that it used to be the case that there wasn't overtime in college football? And he was flabbergasted. He was like, what? What are you talking about, Dad? There used to not be college football overtime. I said, yeah, we used to have games end in ties. And he said, my God, this is crazy. Are you serious? I said, yeah. And I said, on top of that, we used to not have a college football playoff. We also used to have multiple teams compete and end up with the same title. And we would argue about who was better, and they wouldn't actually play. And he was like, wait, Dad, we used to have tie college football games. Like, they ended in a legitimate tie. I said, yeah. And he said, and you're telling me that the best teams would end up getting voted championships and they never even played against each other and people just sat around and argued about who was better all the time? And I said, yeah. For instance, 2004 Auburn was better than 2004 USC. And people still argue about it 14 years later. There's Auburn fans watching or listening to this show right now like, you're goddamn right they were. And there's a bunch of USC fans who will listen or watch this and say, you guys are crazy. We would have waxed you back in 2004. USC was the best team in college football. Did you see what we did to Oklahoma? There's still people who want to play that game. There's dudes out there 40 years old, can barely walk. They want to play that game in a parking lot and figure out who was actually still the champ in 2004. If I called Matt Leinart right now and I got him to start talking about that game, he will still say we would have waxed Auburn's ass because we waxed Auburn's ass the year before when I started my first game and went on the road and we won in Jordan-Hare Stadium. So the debates have not even ended, even now. But we got a college football playoff and things have gotten much better. I love college football overtime, and I also really like the 4-team playoff. But, and I have been on this for a long time, if you made me the king of college football, there are two things that I would change, and I want to get on my soapbox while we're paying attention to it. I'm going to do it every year till it happens. There is no reason for divisions to exist in college football. It is a stupid and antiquated notion that makes no logical sense for there to be divisions in college football. I'm just going to talk about the SEC, for example, right here. In the SEC right now with 14 teams, when you play an 8-game conference schedule, you end up with 6 teams that you have to play every year in your division, 1 permanent opponent and 1 rotating opponent. That means that every 12 years it is between when you go to play on the road in an SEC stadium. So let me give you an example. LSU hosted Georgia this year. It's a great rivalry game. I love to watch Georgia and LSU play, and I love to watch them play down on the bayou in Death Valley. They will not play in Baton Rouge again until, wait for it, 2030. It will be 2030 until Georgia goes back to LSU and plays in Baton Rouge again. This means a great deal to me as a guy who wrote my first book called Dixieland Delight about going around to every conference stadium. I think that every single player should play a home and away during 4 years in his conference so that you have been everywhere, both home and away. If you just eliminated divisions and you played, I think the math here works out really well. You played 4 yearly rivals, right? No, 3 yearly rivals, and you rotated the other 5. You would play home and away in 4 years against every team in the conference. It would all even out. Now, you'd have to fight to figure out exactly who the 3 rivals are, but you play 3 yearly rivals, and then you play one half of the conference 1 year and the other half of the conference the next year, and then on the backside of that, you would host them home and away. So in a 4-year process, you would be able to play home and away at every SEC school. Divisions prohibit that from happening, so you end up with crappy games every year that nobody cares about. I'll give you an example. Does anybody really care that much about seeing Missouri and Arkansas play every year? Does anybody really care about South Carolina and Texas A&M playing a football game every year? No, of course not. Do away with bad rivalries. 3 yearly rivals, and you play every other team every other year. It ends up completely fair. Here's my second thing that I would change. So do away with divisions everywhere. And obviously in the Big Ten, this is even more ludicrous because the 4 best programs right now are all in the Big Ten East. Maybe Scott Frost is going to change that. Maybe you can make an argument that Wisconsin's one of the 4 best programs. I don't think you can. The 4 best programs in the Big Ten are all in the Big Ten East. Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Penn State are all the 4 best programs in the Big Ten. It's nonsensical for the Big Ten East to produce a team like Ohio State or Penn State or Michigan State or Michigan, maybe it'll happen someday, Michigan fans, and go up against an 8-4 Northwestern team that lost to Akron, that lost to Duke, and that lost to Notre Dame. It's stupid. It makes no sense to have geographic divisions. Divisions in general make no sense. So my number one thing that I would change about college football is I'd do away with all divisions. I think they're nonsensical. If you still want to play conference title games, just take the top 2 teams. Just take whoever the top 2 teams is and put them head to head. The schedules balance out over times. Yes, there might be bitching, but the divisions are more slanted than alternating the schedules would be. So that's part 1. Number 2, conference title games make no sense. We play the regular season so we know who the best teams are already. The best team in the ACC is Clemson. The best team in the Big Ten is Ohio State. The best team in the SEC is Alabama. The best team in the Big 12 is Oklahoma. And the best team in the Pac-12 is Washington. We played all those conference games to determine who the best team was. I had Dan Wetzel on the show this morning, and we were talking. And he said, imagine, this is a great analogy. He said, imagine that you're coaching Little League. And I can imagine that because I do. I coach Little League baseball. I coach Little League basketball. I've done it all, right? I'm a Renaissance man. Imagine if at the end of your Little League baseball season, you had the tournament to decide who the champ was. And the seeding was such that you were coaching the team that had gone undefeated. And they said, hey, we're going to start off this tournament, and you and your team, which has not lost, are going to play the 7th best team in the conference here. And all that's going to happen there is if you lose, your season is over and you don't get to compete for the championship. But if you win, nothing changes. You'd be like, wait a minute. You want me to play my team, which has won every game, even though we're undefeated, against a crappy team, relatively speaking, and all that can happen is my team can lose, and we gain nothing if we win because we already know that we were the number 1 team. You would say, yeah, we're not going to do that. That makes no sense. My team's not going to play in that game. The risk-reward is completely illogical. That's what conference championship games are. They make no sense. They are thoroughly illogical. They are blatant money grabs designed to exist only for money. I'm not opposed to money, but I like my money to be connected to logic, and there is no logic associated here. Instead, here is what you could be doing. You could be using the College Football Playoff Committee and their top 8 rankings to do this. Alabama could, as the 1 seed, Clemson is the 2, Notre Dame is the 3, Georgia is the 4, Oklahoma is the 5, Ohio State is the 6, Michigan is the 7, and Central Florida is the 8. Okay? This is an incredible setup, right? You've got 8 teams. Take the top 4 teams, put them into the college football playoff as host teams. Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Georgia would all get to host quarterfinal playoff games. And then you would take 5, 6, 7, and 8, and you would put them on the road. Alabama, under this scenario, would play UCF. Clemson would play Michigan. Notre Dame would play Ohio State. And Georgia would play Oklahoma. Can you imagine how phenomenal all of those games on campus would be? You could play them on not this weekend, but next weekend. You could allow all of the fun and festivity and frivolity of college football on campus. You would bring all that money and revenue into the on-campus venues. And I think this is significant, just like in the NFL, you would reward teams with home field advantage who actually won games. Right now, whether you're seeded 1, 2, 3, or 4 doesn't matter, because you're basically playing a neutral site game, and the difference is relatively insubstantial. Last year, Clemson played Alabama. Alabama was favored to win that game. It wouldn't have mattered if Alabama was the 1 or if they were the 4. The 2 and the 3 doesn't actually matter. I am knocking away the idea of auto bids from Power 5 conferences because my concern is, what would you do if 7-6 Pitt, 7-5 Pitt beats Clemson? Or what would you do if Utah beats Washington? If your team isn't good enough at the end of the year to be in the top 8, then you don't deserve to play for a championship. Florida is the number 9 team in America right now. Even if you are a Florida Gator fan, do you believe that Florida played well enough during this year to compete for a national championship? That's absurd. LSU is the 10. Sorry, LSU, you lost 3 games. Washington's the 11, Penn State's the 12, Washington State is the 13, Texas, Kentucky. None of these teams deserve to play for national championships. 8 is the sweet spot. Leave it at 8. Play 4 games on campus. Let the College Football Playoff Committee seed it just like they seed the NCAA tournament. And let's roll. Each of these games would be worth $150 million or more, which is vastly more than the conference title games are worth. And then you could roll that additional $600 million at least, which would double the overall value for the schools and the conferences for what the college football playoff is worth now. You redistribute that money, and it makes the athletic departments a lot more able to support all the other sports which nobody watches. This is perfect logic. Play a regular season, get in the top 8, make the college football playoff, and then you got to win 3 games and you're there, and you eliminate the necessity of all these worthless conference title games. That is my position. It's perfectly business sound. It makes total sense. Everybody should do it. That is all perfect setup. I think 8's the sweet spot. Some people say 16. 16's too many. 12's too many. 8 is the sweet spot. I would be comfortable locking it in stone for all time at 8. If you're not good enough to be one of the 8 best teams in college football, then I don't feel sorry for you. You don't deserve to play for a championship. It makes the regular season matter even more. That's always been one of the worst arguments, is that the regular season is going to matter less. You're totally wrong. All right, let me give you my college football gambling picks quickly, and then I want to get into Reuben Foster before the show is over here for sure. Utah +5 against Washington in the Pac-12 title game. MTSU -1 versus UAB. Memphis +3.5 and the over 64.5 in the UCF game. Texas, Oklahoma, the over 78. The over 78 is my blood bank guarantee. If you have watched this game, there is no doubt about it. Bama, Georgia, +13. I like Georgia +13. And then Clemson and Pitt, over 53. I also love the over 53. My write-up of these picks will be up tomorrow on Outkick.com. The write-up will be up tomorrow. People are going to say, where's the write-up? The write-up is going to be up tomorrow, and you will be ready to have them all in written form tomorrow. I want to talk about Reuben Foster. Reuben Foster has been signed by the Washington Redskins, despite the fact that he was arrested on Saturday, the night before a game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as a member of the San Francisco 49ers. Here are my thoughts in general about this. First of all, the woman accusing him of beating her now is also the same woman who accused him of beating her back in May and then said she lied and made it all up. This is, beyond a shadow of a doubt, a toxic relationship. If there was anybody who could get a hold of either of these people, either Reuben Foster or this woman, they would say, neither one of you should be together anymore, and neither one of you should ever be alone without an adult supervising your interaction at this point in time. It doesn't make sense to me that this relationship is continuing to be allowed to fester. It is a toxic relationship. They don't need to be around each other anymore. But here is my big issue, and this is the same thing I said about Brett Kavanaugh. In this situation, we have a woman who has admitted that she lied to authorities about Reuben Foster before. And now she is saying that he attacked her again. And why should we believe her on the face of this investigation, given the fact that we know she has been, at least in her past statements, said that she is a confirmed liar? My big issue with the way we respond to controversy in America today is we presume whatever our worldview is reflected by whatever the story is. I don't know what happened between Reuben Foster and this woman. You don't know what happened between Reuben Foster and the woman. The problem with people who say, believe all women, is some women lie. In fact, we know that in May, this woman said she lied. Now, maybe she was lying about lying. I don't know. What I do know is that when you are a lawyer, you have to deal with whether people are reliable or unreliable witnesses. This woman is the definition of an unreliable witness. We don't know what happened. Okay? We know that this relationship is so toxic that neither of these individuals should be together without adults around ever again, in my opinion. But I also don't think the risk reward for the Washington Redskins is worth signing Reuben Foster in this situation. You are 6-5 and fighting for a playoff berth. You are saying that he is not going to play for the rest of the year. What is wrong with allowing him to clear waivers and then attempting to sign him at the end of the year if you believe that his talent exceeds his problems? I also would say this. Can you imagine what the lead story would be if Reuben Foster was white? If Reuben Foster were a white man, he would be being held up as the very definition of white privilege in America. People would be saying it doesn't matter what a white man does, he can still get a job in this country, even if he's been arrested twice in 6 months for beating up a woman. The truth of the matter is this: the NFL is a meritocracy. And one of the reasons I fundamentally reject both politics and race being thrown into sports all the time, the intersection of race, the intersection of politics, is because ultimately in a meritocracy, all that matters is whether or not you have the talent to succeed. I don't believe that anybody in the NFL gets discriminated against based on their race. I don't believe anybody in the NFL gets discriminated against based on anything but their talent. It's why the NFL and sports in general should be a model for America, and we should not be dragging politics into sports. We should be using sports as a model for what we should be doing with politics. The best man or woman wins regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, or religion. We don't spend a lot of time sitting around talking about systemic issues. There's nobody out there who's ever walked into a locker room and said our weight room isn't as good as theirs, and so we should get to start off with 5 extra points. There's nobody who's ever said, hey, our uniforms are uglier, so we should get to start off with 2 extra points. There's nobody who's ever said, hey, you're a product of a single-family household, so you should get an advantage on the field of play that others do not. Ultimately, what sports teaches you is you are responsible for yourself. I am a big believer in the primacy of individual decision-making. I might not always make the right decision. In fact, I make the wrong decision frequently. Ask my kids. Ask my wife. But I don't blame anybody else for the decisions that I make. And what we have to do in this country is allow more people to embrace the idea that the only hand you can rely on is the one at the end of your sleeve. And so, if someone is of the belief that Reuben Foster deserves a second, third, or fourth chance, it is not because of anything other than his extreme talent when it comes to football. And you may not like the fact that the Washington Redskins are signing Reuben Foster. I don't personally agree with it. It's not a risk that I would take if I were an owner. But I also appreciate the fact that what I love about sports is ultimately it's about the talent. It's about whether you can make a play or not. It's about, for a linebacker, whether you can get out on the field and perform better as a linebacker than other people. And guess what? When he plays at a high level, Reuben Foster is a first-round caliber talent at linebacker. I saw it at Alabama. I know he can do it in the NFL too. So I don't use sports as a window to project everything about society onto that story. I talked about this last week. I loved the response that I'm finally starting to see from ESPN. They let Kate Fagan go. And Kate Fagan said, when she left, she said, I had hoped at ESPN that one day we were going to be able to do a show about the intersection of gender issues and sports. And I said, a show? That might be a 3-minute story on Outside the Lines in June when there's nothing else going on. But nobody cares who is a sports fan about the intersection of sexuality and sports on a day-to-day basis. I don't care who Michael Slam slept with. I frankly don't care who Dwight Howard slept with. I care whether or not you are really good at your sport. I will admit that I cared when Jimmy Garoppolo went out with a porn star. But that's on an entertaining level, not like it's a, oh my God, society is forever changed because of this decision. And I think what people are starting to recognize is we don't need all these intersections. I don't need the intersection of women's marches and how it's implicating the world of sports. I just don't. I need sports and opinions surrounding sports. And that's my advice to everybody out there. So on the Reuben Foster front, my position in general is don't automatically believe every woman. Don't automatically believe every man. Don't automatically believe every black person or every white person or every Hispanic person or every Asian person. Look into the facts before you make a decision. And if the Washington Redskins have done a diligent investigation and they believe that Reuben Foster is not guilty of what he has been accused of, then they may well be right. The risk might be worth the reward. I don't know. It's not a risk that I would take. Finally, I have got a fun story to end with. If you listen to the radio show, you're going to know this story already. Some people out there, they think they got a rough life. And some of you have rough lives. Some of you work a lot. Some of you have crappy parents. Some of you have crappy kids. Some of you have crappy spouses or crappy boyfriends or crappy girlfriends. Ultimately, all you can control is you. That's my advice. The primacy of the individual. What you can also do is make sure that when you go to the bathroom, you don't let a 10-foot python bite your penis. This is one of the most amazing stories I've ever seen. A 10-foot python sank its fangs into a man's penis while he sat on the toilet in Thailand, forcing him to rip the snake off with his bare hands. This is unbelievable. The man's name, Turd Sack. Turd Sack Bang went to use the toilets at his office in Bangkok, Thailand yesterday, and the snake slithered up and attacked him from below. The 45-year-old howled in pain, and colleagues rushed to the bathroom to find him wrestling with the serpent, which had clamped its jaws around his penis. He then ripped off the snake and sprinted outside with blood pouring from his groin. The snake retreated back into the toilet bowl, and Turd Sack needed, what an amazing name for a guy to get bit by on his penis while he's going to the bathroom, Turd Sack. He needed 15 stitches in the tip of his penis. Now, it stinks to have a snake bite your dick and try to bite your dick off. This is my worst nightmare. Positive 15 stitches in the dick. I'm telling everybody that I got a 15-stitch dick. Everybody, remember when Tiger Woods had that photo leak? And I was like, man, if I were Tiger Woods, I'd be posting this photo everywhere. If I'm Turd Sack, I'm letting everybody know in all Thailand that I got a 15-stitch dick. Because if you got a 15 stitches on the tip of your penis, this dude must have a baby holding an apple arm between his legs right now. He might have a kickstand for all we know. This might be why Turd Sack got attacked. I'm telling you right now, 15-stitch dick. I ain't complaining. I don't want my dick to get bit. But I definitely don't understand, or do understand, how the snake could get confused. The snake thought that was a big rat. He thought, I'm going to get a big meal here. I've been living in this toilet bowl forever. God, unbelievable. What a gift I've got here. Next thing you know, old Turd Sack, man, he's got a snake on his dick. Footage shows animal experts trying to corner that. Turd Sack was quoted. Turd Sack was quoted as follows: I was about to stand up from the toilet. Then I felt a bite in my penis. I immediately knew it was a snake. I stood up and grabbed the python's head and then pulled it off me. There was blood everywhere. If you think you're having a rough day, Turd Sack got his dick bit by a snake. Unless you got your dick bit by a snake today, your day ain't that bad. He yanked it off. He said, I should have been more careful. I saw a snake in another toilet in the house 2 months ago, so I was using this one instead, but I didn't realize the toilets could be connected. Turd Sack said the staff at the production company had seen the snake in the toilet 2 months ago and had even joked about it biting one of them. These are tough motherfuckers. Also, they tried to catch it, but after it escaped, they simply stopped using the bathroom where it had been seen. If there is ever a snake in the toilet in my house, I am selling the house. The day that I see a snake in my toilet, I'll never feel comfortable in this house again. I'm putting it on the market, and I'm moving. Turd Sack said there are 2 bathrooms in the building, and the snake had been seen before in one of the bathrooms. We stopped using that toilet, thought it would be okay. This was a mistake, as I didn't realize they were connected. Even in the morning, my boss had joked, be careful of the snake. Well, I will now know to be careful. I'll be anxious every time I use the toilet now. Here's the deal. They caught the snake. They released it out into the wild. Whatever you're doing for the rest of this week, I want you to remember something. I want you to remember something very clearly. Things could always be worse. Your dick could always be bit by a snake while you're going to the bathroom. If your dick didn't get bit by a snake while you're going to your bathroom, then it's not that bad of a day. You're going to be fine. DBAP, but sometimes you need to SBAP. And by the way, SBAP, very definition of SBAP, if there's a snake in your house in one bathroom, don't think it's okay to keep using the other bathroom. Get out of there right now. Turd Sack, lucky to be alive. He's got 15 stitches. He's a hero for surviving that sneak attack on his penis by that snake. But don't be like Turd Sack. Don't get bit on the dick by a penis. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'll see you guys tomorrow. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. Kisses. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.